presidential aspirants factors that are at play. Remember, there is Musalia Mudavadi with ANC, there is Raila Odinga with ODM, there is William Ruto with UDA, and these three are actually the fights that are going on in Matungu right now. Mm-hmm. I don't think Echesa was slapping an election official for a local race or over a local race or the parliamentary race. It was the fights that are going on right at the top there. And remember, Mudavadi is in this very tough battle for the control of Kakamega politics with the Kakamega governor, Wycliffe Oparanya of ODM, whose candidate is Were, who is doing quite well as a top two. And you also have the UDA factor. And here is where Deputy President William Ruto is looking at Western, whether the many visits, the many projects he's launched there, the church harambes, the frequent visits will pay off through this by-elections. So we are seeing this. It is a race between Musalia Mudavadi, William Ruto, and Raila Odinga. We should look beyond those candidates. And it is also important to point that this is the first time that the Deputy President's perceived party, UDA, is contesting in an election. The party is about 2 months, 3 months old. Mm-hmm. It is its first outing in a political competition, so to say. The Msambweni candidate was not a UDA candidate per se. He was an independent candidate, actually, who had even contested in the ODM nominations and contested the results, and so vied as an independent candidate. So much as we saw the members of parliament allied to the deputy president ganging up with Faisal Badar, the independent candidate, you wouldn't probably call him a UDA candidate per se in the strict sense of it, though by affiliation he could have been. But this is the first outing for UDA, so to say. And so I would think it was their attempt to test their capacity on the ground and see whether maybe the public or the ground is resonating with the party. And you saw the contest in London, for example. You also saw some local contests. Susan Kihika was fronting the UDA candidate, and she also has gubernatorial ambitions in Nakuru County. On the other hand, we saw the governor, the incumbent governor, Lee Kinyanjui, fronting the Jubilee candidate there. You saw quite a number of MPs from the Kieleweke side of the political affairs in Jubilee, fronting the Jubilee candidate in London Ward. And you also saw quite a number of MPs, in fact, including now. I've seen a photo of about 15, 20 MPs allied to the Deputy President celebrating the win, or what they call a win in London Ward, though it has not been called, but looking at the numbers so far, and only 8 polling stations to go, I highly doubt whether they will make any difference in terms of...
And for ward race, I mean, by the time you have that kind of margin,
yeah, it's quite huge, so to say. I mean, look at the MPs that I was talking about. They're celebrating that win in London, and for them, it looks like a personal victory for them, as Linus had pointed out earlier. The Deputy President's faction in Jubilee contesting against the President's faction in Jubilee. So there were also intra-Jubilee dynamics. Now, jumping to Kabuchai, for example, this is Moses Wetangula's home turf. Remember, Kabuchai constituency was initially part of the larger Sirisia constituency, you remember? Before the boundaries delimitation some years back. And the member of parliament who passed on, James Mukwelu Sweti, was a 2-time member of parliament elected on a Ford Kenya ticket. So this was a personal contest. But was quite close to the DP as of his death. So he was literally tanga-tanga. Actually, not necessarily. The one who was very close to the Deputy President is the former MP for Matungu, Justus Murunga. Mm-hmm. Though elected on an ANC ticket, was more affiliated to the tanga-tanga wing of the political divide in the country. Yeah. So for Moses Wetangula, this was a personal contest, if you may like, because it would be like losing in his home constituency. Actually, Kabuchai is his home constituency.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So losing there would have been a bit difficult for him. And you remember even the contests before this main race. You remember Moses Wetangula, Kalonzo Musyoka, Gideon Moi, Musalia Mudavadi.
doing joint campaigns in Kabuchai and Matungu.
And so far, I mean, in
actually
Kabuchai,
Ford Kenya was leaving Matungu for ANC, and ANC was leaving Kabuchai for Ford Kenya.
But tonight, I mean, so far as it is, it looks like Moses Wetangula is having a good night, at least so far. But if you're Musalia Mudavadi Jamila, you're looking at all these numbers coming from Matungu, you're not sitting pretty, because look, I mean, the ODM candidate leading there, and ANC is not even number 2. It's only 10%, but that is quite a lot also, thinking about how things go in by-elections. So it's really going to be something that a lot of people will be watching, considering that right now people are beginning to position themselves even in terms of negotiations for different positions and whatnot.
That is true, Joe, because I would have thought if things had been okay within the NASA coalition, we may have had maybe the ANC candidate step aside for the ODM one so they could consolidate those votes. But clearly, Musalia Mudavadi has spoken about his ambitions even when he was hosted here. But Joe, when you talk about parties and affiliations and maybe seeing parties coming together, maybe come just before 2022 consolidating, I look at the party dynamics here in these by-elections, and it is clearly people are voting probably maybe not for the candidates who are holding these tickets. They're voting for the parties that these candidates stand for. We have, in fact, Gashuri, we were laughing about how we had almost predicted, looking at the dynamics about who is going to win where in these by-elections. Not because of the particular candidates. We're looking at the parties that they were representing.
And the patterns therein.
And we've seen instances where people have voted in candidates who are independents based on who those people are, considering that the voters decide that we want this person, not because of the party they are in, it's because it's the person we want. But in this instance, we are seeing people voting the parties. And I don't know if this will be replicated going forward in the elections in 2022, where people will be voting for the party that the person is, the coalition of parties maybe, or the parties that they feel that they want to see in power.
Wow. I think this is quite going to be an interesting night, because if you think about how this whole by-election was built. I mean, we've seen campaigns like we've not seen lately. I mean, look, this is just constituencies.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a good place.
By the way, whichever these races go, the interesting thing, and this is the most unfortunate thing, especially for residents of the areas, the 7 areas where the by-elections are being conducted, the place of money, the question of money that was used in the campaigns. I think these were very expensive campaigns, so to say. And I think the residents in those constituencies and wards probably would have wished that the campaigns continue a little longer, because this was also, a harvesting period for them, which is the most unfortunate bit of these campaigns. Because from tomorrow, once the results are announced, then you are left with your member of parliament, and with just about 16 months to go, you have now to turn to them to, give you what they had promised. But also, it raises the stakes and the cost of campaigns in subsequent elections. So you can imagine whoever wins now and the amount of money that has been invested here, 2022, you may not likely get the same amount of money to go back to the electorate and campaign. Because at this point, you are part of a bigger campaign that is also presidential in nature. Next year, in August, you will be on your own, most definitely. So it will be also a little difficult for those who are contesting now to replicate the same performance next year in August.
Yeah. You're totally right, because London Ward has just had a national election.
Yep.
And enjoying the national profile. We talk about them. They'll be on in headlines out there and many other things. But there's a little matter that will also come in between now, London's Ward, and the 2022 election. And that will be the referendum, which is an election in all its facets. So this, again, will see the country going into quite a charged political atmosphere. There's been talk of, by the Deputy President specifically, that it should not be a contested one. But we are waiting to see what today translates to when it comes to the referendum that we are awaiting between now and, is it June?
Yeah, great.